the organizers for inviting me over and providing me the space to speak. I think what Mr. Claude Rexitis has already mentioned.
Just call me Claude.
Okay, thank you. What Claude has mentioned is actually, in a sane world, a very, very implementable formula. And if anyone was looking for actually implementing peace in Kashmir or having a permanent settlement to Kashmir, I think there couldn't be a better roadmap to that. It's implementable. It includes all the stakeholders to the picture, and it provides space for everyone to vent out, figure out what they want to do, and go about doing everything. And step by step, everything is possible. But unfortunately, it can only happen in a world where sanity prevails and where logic, as well as the will to technically resolve the issue, prevails. And when we look at this impasse in Kashmir, starting from 2019, but something that we have inherited for the last 7+ decades, one thing that is very clear is that there is complete madness and there's a method to that madness. And in that method to that madness, there is very little will to resolve the problem of Kashmir from a humanitarian angle, and from looking at Kashmir as a problem which can be resolved and just not a real estate. And the fact that Kashmir is not a real estate is evident from the notion that there are people in Kashmir who are suffering terribly, owing to several things, and not just in the last 2 to 3 years, but several years down past, several decades down the lane. When it comes to having resolutions or solutions to Kashmir, what we find is that there's a lot of paperwork attached to that. We have at least 17 resolutions on Kashmir. Unfortunately, none after 1972. None of those resolutions, in good faith, bad faith, arbitrary resolutions, whatever we would like to call them, were totally adapted by any of the stakeholders in letter and spirit. So the UN system has also been used, unfortunately, as a delaying tactic when it comes to the Kashmir problem. And that I'm extremely sorry, Claude, that I'm actually very politely undoing your entire good thesis. But this is this madness to this aspect that goes beyond any rationality, and the very fact that, do we really want to resolve Kashmir? The main question actually comes to this point. The eminent group of eminent speakers that you are talking about, politicians or stakeholders, there have been several rounds of that as well. We've had special envoys in Kashmir. We have had group of eminent people on Kashmir who have looked into this, who have invested their good offices, their energy, their sincere will and commitment to the cause. Nothing came out of it. We have also had different cartographic plans for Kashmir, where the valley could come to Pakistan, the Pir Panjal Range proposal, or the Chenab River Plan proposal. All of these have been brought forward, and they have unfortunately died an illogical death, I would actually say here, because a lot of them could, in their entirety, could be adopted by either of the stakeholders and looked forward to. From the Indian side, when I look at Kashmir, I actually feel that they have resolved the problem. They have control of the land, the occupied land that Pakistan terms to be occupied. They have their own government. They have a blanket curfew over Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh. They have done away with the UN resolutions, which sort of bound them in a kind of a program where they could not bring about any change. They very well managed to constitute any change that they wanted to do, and no one has batted an eyelash, which technically means that India can get away with whatever it wants. Having said that, if it's not just a question of territory, it's also a question of the people who are residing in that particular territory. And since August 5th, 2019, those people are under the worst lockdown permissible, right? And what has happened? What has happened is the West was very vocal in talking about the banning of the internet and communication linkages. That was the least of the problems. The problem was that women who were expecting their children could not go to the hospitals, and either they delivered those children under very harsh circumstances at home, or they died in the process because they were denied hospital space. They were not allowed to leave their homes. Children have not been able to go to their schools. People have not been able to return to their work. India is showcasing that there is a lot of renormalizing of the civil activity. But at the same time, many people in India are being issued, many people in Valley of Kashmir specifically, but also in Jammu, are being issued sacking letters, and they are no longer serving for the government. The government is changing its criteria of recruitment, which is specifically targeting Muslim populations, and many people are losing their jobs. Many of the traders, Kashmir is a place which thrived on tourism, and there is no tourism. And of course, there was an industry affiliated with tourism, and that was the handicraft, art and craft industry. And that art and craft industry is dying a natural death because there are no buyers. There's no way out of that area, and they're languishing, and especially under Modi, the larger ambit of anti-Muslim sentiment that he has stroked in India. It is having a severe repercussion on the Kashmiri traders, economic stakeholders, and many others. So it is actually destroying Kashmir's local economy and compelling people gradually to leave Kashmir. So directly or indirectly, what is happening is that the Muslim population is being forced out of Kashmir. Many are dying as a result of firing at the hands of the security agencies, and several people are leaving Kashmir because Kashmir is no longer the place that they reckon to be. It is no longer their safe homeland. It was never a safe homeland, but at least it had a semblance of homeland, and that homeland is also becoming less and less hospitable for them. Last but not least, also are those laws that India implemented under the guise that we are allowing the women, we are talking about women liberation and so many other things, and we are allowing the women to choose their partners of their liking and so on and so forth. And that is also a direct, indirect way of again taking away the special status for the Muslims. So the very fact that that we have also mentioned about, or it has been mentioned that the draconian laws need to be revised. If India had to revise those draconian laws, why would it have implemented in the first place? So that is a very unfortunate situation, because they are doing all of these things because they feel that there is no hindering them. As for the spirit of dialogue, that is more than welcome. Pakistan at the moment wants to have dialogue with India. Our civil military establishment both have hinted towards that, but the military establishment, which has always been caricatured as the key spoiler in the picture, has very vocally talked about it, and that's not a small offering. Yet the fact is that from the Indian military side, what we hear is that we should attack Pakistan with a BrahMos, and Viola, lo and behold, within a couple of weeks, we have a misfire of an Indian supersonic missile, which was going in one trajectory, and suddenly it made a 45-degree turn and landed in Pakistan. So how should Pakistan take it? There could be several options. One option could be that we technically go for all-out war, which means that not only Kashmir, India, and Pakistan would suffer terribly, and there could be, in a worst-case scenario, a nuclear exchange, starting from a tactical, going all the way up to strategic, affecting 1/4 of the global population. But however people consider us to be trigger happy, reckless, and insane, this is an option that we don't want to go for. Having said that, there's a footnote to this thing, and that footnote is that, dear policymakers, do not take nuclear weapons as a weapon of political currency and keep telling your ill-informed and extremely excited population that our nuclear weapons are weapons that need to be used. Our nuclear weapons, we would make a bloody holy out of Pakistanis, because and Pakistan has also done certain things like this in the past, where our very trigger-happy religio-political leaders have been talking talking about using nuclear weapons to bomb the adversary to the kingdom come. The net result, unfortunately, then becomes is that people think that nuclear weapons are a potent tool that should be used in war. And the threshold that we give, the psychological threshold that we subscribe to nuclear weapons becomes lower and lower. And people tend to associate too many of their affiliations with such deadly devices. The other option could be, shall we normalize the LOC? Well, yes, for the past couple of months, LOC is normalized. There is no written agreement between India and Pakistan. Now, there is this understanding that was there a couple of decades back as well, but then that understanding became a misunderstanding, and it was openly violated, and many civilians killed. For Pakistan, violations of the ceasefire or violations of firing across the LOC is problematic, more than it is problematic for India, not because I'm saying it emotionally, but the fact is that anyone that you ask in Pakistan, they say that on this side of Kashmir or on that side of Kashmir, there are a Muslim population. So if anyone is caught in crossfire, we have a double a problem with that. So we would ideally like to have the LOC all settled and all. Shall we have flag waving across the LOC? That would also mean that in case, if I take it in a literal tone, because this is also an option which is being talked about and which is being whispered in strategic ears, that there should be flag waving. And if I take a flag waving as a literal term rather than metaphorically, which would mean that an Indian flag across the LOC and a Pakistani flag across this. So for me, that's not problematic. But for me, what is problematic is to see that there's an Indian flag across the LOC, which means that both sides are tacitly agreeing to the fact that that is their side and this is our side, or they're saying that is their side and this is ours. So that means that we are now quietly and silently accepting that the LOC is an international border, hypothetically, and whosoever flag is waving on across this divide is the holder of that territory. So do we really want to go there? I think this is jumping the gun a little bit too much. So we need to be a bit more careful when we look at this notion. And these notions are in circulation. Maintaining the status quo, that is there. However, the time and the watch both are in India's hand. So maintaining the status quo is neither good for the Kashmiris nor is it good for Pakistan, because what is happening by maintaining the status quo and India maintaining the watch in its hand is that they are openly violating each and every that was placed on them. The lockdown provides them with the opportunity of bringing direct, indirect, all type of demographic changes. It also provides them with this opportunity that they can willfully turn people out of jobs, something that I had referred to earlier. It provides them with this opportunity to indulge in human rights violation with impunity. It also provides them with this opportunity to redraw the map, which they have done already. However, the redrawing of map is not something that happened post 2019. It is something that happened pre 2019. The earliest that they had done was, at least the record is 2016, and I'm pretty sure they have done it even before that. However, and of course, altering the narrative. However, the very fact is what is in favor of India besides the watch and the time is the international community. That totally underplays and downplays Kashmir's relevance and significance. All they see is Kashmir as a nuclear flashpoint. Kashmir is just not a nuclear flashpoint. There's a lot more to Kashmir. The last but not the least option here that will happen if we keep the status quo maintained the way it is, that it provides India and Pakistan under the nuclear shadow a lot of space to carry out missile misfires, to conduct surgical strikes, to have false flag operations, to have carefully staged bombing incidents such as Uri, Pathankot, etc., and use them for political internal mileage. And this will continue. And this is going to actually increase the threshold of conflict between India and Pakistan to a point where, unfortunately, they might end up engaging in a long-drawn battle, which is being in a physical iteration, which is for the moment being avoided. And of course, the slow bleed approach that is happening in Kashmir.